I think it's a commonplace that science is very good at making predictions. Yeah, that's what scientists do. They make predictions. And they make predictions based upon empirical research. And what they try to do is falsify and to demonstrate the falsifiability of something. And once they're able to demonstrate that falsifiability, they build hypotheses, and then those build more and more hypotheses. But basically, what they're trying to do is to establish a system that enables solid prediction. And the more reliable the prediction, we could say, the better the science, and that science itself has some kind of predictive value because the phenomena that it deals with are regular or recurrent, or they have enough of a structure and a pattern that we can anticipate a reoccurrence of enough of a similar phenomena to predict that aspect or those conditions that we're going to predict. Now, I was recently out at a lunch discussion with someone who is in the physical sciences, and this person was making some claims that I would really like to talk about, maybe in more detail, and see what other people think about this. But the person was in some way suggesting that what we find when we look out in the natural world is continuity, and continuity all the way down from the inorganic to the organic, in through life, all the way in through consciousness and self-consciousness. And saying, look, what you see in the world is just one basic kind of stuff, and you see continuity. There's different levels of organization, there's different levels of complexity, but all said and done, there's basically the same kind of stuff. The stuff is just the stuff, and the task then is to slowly get biology and the biological sciences out of their infancy and get them to be able to establish with regular consistency or reliability, those laws, those basic principles, those universals that will allow us to predict with the same amount of accuracy things in the biological world that we're now able to predict in the physical world, and the sort of physical manipulations that we're able to do, for example, in physics or chemistry. Soon enough, we'll be able to do that sort of prediction at the level of biology. I really want to call that into question. The way to call this into question is to go all the way back to Aristotle. Aristotle posits 4 different kinds of causes. There is material cause, efficient cause, formal cause, and then final cause. Now, the material cause and efficient cause, that science is very good at dealing with. Final cause, it is not very good at dealing with. Final cause is what is the telos, the teleology, what is the telos of a given organism or a process. One might say, of a person might be the case as the exemplar. But the question is, when we're asking with final cause, is there a sense of purpose or intention or will that is more than just prediction? And what I would ask you is this really what you do, is predict your own behavior? I'm asking this in all seriousness. Is that what we're really trying to do, is predict our own behavior? Now, I grant, you may want to predict the behavior of other people. You may want to predict what strangers do. You may even, I guess, rely upon predicting loved ones and sort of getting a sense of what they're likely to do and then laying your prediction on what they're likely to do there. But I think even if we do that to ourselves and we say, well, I'm going to sort of predict what I'm going to do, that is such an impoverishment of your humanity to do nothing more than predict what you're going to do. You are available to the world to bring purposes to the world. You don't just predict your behavior, you enable your behavior, you choose your behavior. Do you just predict what you're going to choose? If you're just predicting what you're going to choose, why even make the choice? Just predict it and then just do what you predicted. There's something very odd about it. Let's ask it a different question. Let's see if we come at this question a different way. What's a promise? What does it mean to make a promise to someone? Can other creatures make promises? See, this is Nietzsche. Nietzsche says the paradox that nature set to itself was to allow for an animal that could make promises. I think we not only make promises to others, which then there's something about a prediction. We predict whether or not that other is going to keep that promise. But predicting whether or not another's going to keep a promise is so different than hoping that they do. In the same way that predicting whether or not one is going to keep a promise is so different than the act of trying to actually keep the promise. A promise seems like the kind of thing that is very, very different than sheer prediction. Not to deny that there is a prediction. Should we strategically predict our own behavior? Oh yes, I think the strategist would certainly take advantage of this. There are people who will anticipate, somebody's trying to quit smoking. They may know that they're going to, jones around for a cigarette, so they'll purposefully leave no cigarettes in the house, and that way, knowing that they're going to scramble for it, that way they circumvent their desire to have a cigarette by just preventing them from even having a cigarette in the house. That was a person who sort of predicted their own behavior. But how were they able to actually, if we say that they were just predicting it, how were they able to take that action of keeping the cigarettes from being in the house? Were they just predicting that? There has to be something like will. There has to be something like intention. And I think part of the problem with the biological sciences is that many people have just ousted teleology wholesale. They want to simply suggest that there is no such thing as teleology, that the only kinds of causes are efficient causes and material cause. So if you take these paintings here, right, I'm looking at these paintings, if we do it in terms of Aristotle, we could say for Aristotle, there is the material cause, that is, there is the actual substance that the stuff is made of, right? We have there's oil here and there's it's on the canvas. There's an efficient cause, that's the person, Valerie here, made the paintings, right? She actually took her brush strokes and took it on there. And there was a sort of formal cause. There was some sense of the form that the thing had to take in order to resemble that, what we take to be a picture. The final cause, though, the final cause being the actual picture that she was trying to create, it's hard for biology to know what to do with that. The notion here is that the oak causes the acorn to grow toward its own fulfillment as an oak. We have a tendency to think that the cause must always precede the effect. That's what we mean by efficient cause and material cause. When we start to move toward final cause, when we start to move toward teleology, then we have to recognize that this distinction between cause and effect becomes very problematic only because there does seem to be a kind of purposeful behavior within human life where we're acting out of the final ends. It's not something in our past that's pushing us into doing something. It's something from our future that's calling us into it. Now, the scientist may say, oh no, it wasn't the picture that in Valerie's mind that was calling forth the painting. No, it was some brain state that was preceding it, and the brain state was causing the image of her to draw that thing. I think there is going to be a problem forever within the biological sciences if they're not able to make room for teleology. Is there teleology in the rest of the world? Does the rest of the world make promises? Do other creatures make promises? I don't know, but humans do. What does it mean to say we make promises? Isn't there at least some sense of teleology in the sheer fact that we can make a promise? We can take ourselves seriously when we make a promise, and I don't think we're just predicting whether or not we're going to keep the promise. There is a prediction over whether or not we're going to keep it, but trying to keep a promise is not the same thing as simply predicting whether or not you're going to keep it. Okay, thanks.